Hello, friends. It's another week and another episode of the Launch Sequence podcast. I am your host, Space Tomato. Today I have with me the Astro Pub, lore connoisseur of Star Citizen, also a great personality to follow on Twitter, to be quite honest. But how about you, before we get started, give us your own profile. Where can you be found? What do you do? Why are you here?
Okay. Well, the last question is, I ask myself every day, why are we here? Is there some cosmic plan that,
It's a
but
tough
no,
one.
but my name is Paul Berserker01 Batman Shelley. I run a little stream and YouTube channel called the Astro Pub, where I do lore, Star Citizen content. I do other content every so often. I do everything from lore streams to podcasts to or lore videos, lore streams, lore podcasts, Star Citizen podcasts, gameplay, multi-crew kind of like group session, streams where everyone plays together to kind of do stuff. We do a lot of stuff and those sorts of things. So, and of course, you can find me Thursday and Friday, 8 p.m. I'm sorry, 9 p.m. Eastern, and Saturday and Sunday, 1 p.m. Eastern. So.
And I sent after my stream yesterday. This was yesterday, Saturday.
Yeah.
I sent my stream over to you, and I think, are you playing a Expanse tabletop game? Is
Yep.
that what I saw?
Yeah.
Tell me about this. This sounds exciting.
Okay. So every Saturday morning, before I do the captain's table, I do a tabletop RPG. And the tabletop RPG is called The Spice Must Roll. And every season is a different game. So we do, but it's all science fiction based. Sometimes it's with a property, sometimes it's not. But yeah, just because like I grew up playing Dungeons and Dragons and I like it, but I kind of am tired of fantasy. I just kind of
It's
want
like you
else.
like the format, but you want different insides.
Exactly. So when I started doing this, the big thing was the Expanse RPG, the official Expanse RPG, licensed by a company called Green Ronin Games, was coming out towards the end of season 3 of the Expanse, and it was funded right before as on a Kickstarter. It was funded right before the Expanse got renewed for its 4th and 5th seasons. And so there was a lot of hype, and I'm like, oh, this would be great. I wanted to do tabletop RPGs. I'll just do an Expanse thing. So I grabbed a bunch of people I knew who liked role play or were enjoying role play, a lot of them Star Citizen community. And we did, and I started doing an Expanse game. We're on a 27th episode next week.
Wow. How long do they usually go for?
Usually about 10 episodes a season. So this is the longest one we've done so far. But they use a specific system called the Age system, which Green Ronin owns. And the unique thing about the Expanse RPG is it's set into the Expanse universe. So there's different things, like, for instance, there's a skill called Free Fall, where if you are a belter, if you take a background belter, you actually automatically get that, which means that any kind of tests done in 0G or low G, you get a bonus to it because you grew up in 0G, low G.
Makes sense.
So stuff like that. So the unique aspect of it is these things called stunts, where like you roll dice, and if you get doubles of a dice, you get a certain number of stunt points. And then there's this big list of stunts that you can do, and you can choose to do these crazy things. Like if you want to like do special moves, like you want to like take someone hostage, or you want to wrestle them to the ground, or you want to like knock someone out, or like melt into the shadows or whatever, you can use those stunt points. So the skills aren't really baked into classes or anything like that. There's no real classes. They're there for everyone to use if you hit the right numbers or if you do specific stuff. So it's a very fun thing. And the crew of Actium in our game has been going on strong for about 3 seasons now. So got themselves into a lot of messed up trouble. So
I grew up in, I think I was right at the time where pen and paper RPGs were starting to sort of cede a lot of their territory to the video games that were starting to get more popular. It's like the graphics were getting better and stuff. So I never got to dip into that, but I've always admired the idea behind the pen and paper RPG as being like the definitive, like that's what an RPG should be, you know?
Mhm.
So, like an example, when Cyberpunk 2077 came out, all I thought it was going to be, at least all I thought it was meant to be, was be their digital reincarnation of a pen and paper RPG.
Mhm.
You can imagine my disappointment when it wasn't. But
Yeah.
that's really cool to see one for the Expanse, because that's another sci-fi lore that I love.
Yeah. No, I would love to see them actually make an Expanse RPG. I would be die happy
That
for
would
them
be
to make a
very cool.
Expanse RPG.
That would be
But
very, very cool. One of the community members, Anno, showed me a game that's in development. Right now, it's pretty early. It doesn't even have its audio design, but it uses the same sort of a combat style as you'd see in the Expanse, with long range ballistics, and they're slow moving, so you have to calculate the angles and like shoot
yeah,
down missiles and all this stuff. Very cool. And I think that's a really, really strong characteristic of the Expanse that people like, and that would make for a very cool backdrop to an RPG game. 100%.
yeah.
Speaking of the different lores, though, I told you beforehand that I wanted to talk about a specific subject, and this is because I heard rumors, and so I kind of knew how you were going to answer this question, but I do want to hear you say it, just in case it is wrong. But what is your favorite sci-fi lore?
I mean, if we're gonna go with this one, yes, Mass Effect is my favorite sci-fi lore. um, it's no like it's. I mean, other than the Expanse is my favorite. But my favorite like game lore, 100%
Mhm.
Mass Effect. It's just
I'll
really
take either
well
of
done.
those two, honestly.
Yeah,
So you could pick and choose.
yeah. I mean, it's just Mass Effect was done really well from the start.
Hmm.
It was one of those things where in Mass Effect 1, they just came out and like the BioWare came out and said this is going to be a trilogy. They said that like before they've even released it. It's like we're going to be they're doing a trilogy. So they came into it with a mindset of we're going to build a universe that you have to explore, and that's going to take 3 games to finish the story. So they
Yeah.
built this massive universe of complicated interweaving webs of political and social and myth that kind of wrap together into a game.
Yeah.
And you can see that with, you see like, oh, Mass Effect 1's great, but we're going to retread old ground, and you never do in any of the Mass Effect. Even in Mass Effect Andromeda doesn't tread over old ground with a lot of that stuff, but
Yeah.
that's another
Yeah.
story.
It's it's really Mass Effect. It's one of those things that I absolutely love the lore, but I've been so restricted from it, whether that be because I and I feel like I really explored in the games, but for some reason I just haven't gotten as into the lore as, say, something like Star Wars or even Star
Mhm.
Citizen. And I'm wondering what's in your opinion the best way to explore the lore of Mass Effect?
Um,
Don't tell me Wiki.
well, other than Wiki, Wiki works. There's lots of good videos out there that is good to start with.
Okay.
And the key with any lore, which I enjoy, is I do like tabletop war games. I have miniatures that I paint and that kind of stuff, or
Yeah.
I'm working on script, or I'm doing something else, and I need something in the background. So I just pull up like a lore video for 40K or for Halo or for Star Wars or whatever, and or
Hmm.
Star Trek, and I put it up in the background and just kind of passively listen. Or if I'm like cleaning the house, I have like those running so I can like passively listen. So it's one of
Yeah.
those things where it's kind of like an audiobook.
Hmm. Yep.
And if you don't want to do that and you want to go the step up, buy the audiobooks for the Mass Effect books. There are multiple Mass Effect novels that exist, so you
Hmm.
can get those audiobooks and listen to them as well. So
That
one
is
actual story of what's his name? Your commanding officer in the first game, the one who's kind of there for the other one, the guy whose voice,
um
not Udina, I can't remember his
no,
name.
not Udina. The other the guy that we don't. Oh, no. Anderson, not Anderson.
Anderson, I think it's
Yeah.
Anderson. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, Anderson. There's
Yeah.
the story of Anderson, and like I don't think it was revealed in the games until later that he was almost. No, it wasn't the first game. He was almost the first human Spectre.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
a book. There's a book
Hmm.
that talks about that mission that he went on with. Um, why am I missing the first
It sounds
antagonist?
familiar. Wonder if I've read that. There was a Mass Effect book that I read, and all I remember from it was that there was a giant Quarian on the front, a blinding white light, and somebody running through the white light. I don't
Mhm.
remember what it was called, but that was a Mass Effect. Revelations, was that the one?
It might be. I'm looking it up right now. The story is uh from Saren. It was a story of Saren
Yeah, yeah,
and
that's
yeah,
Revelations.
there's
I'm thinking of
Revelations. Yeah,
Ascension is the one I'm thinking of.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I'm looking here. There's a lot of Mass Effect books.
There are
Good
like
to know.
they did at least one per every game, and then I think they did a couple of other ones to kind of fill out the end of the Mass Effect 3 and that kind of stuff. So that's from me from Halo. I love Halo. Halo is
Oh,
my first love
okay.
of lore. That's my very first love. That's the thing
You're
that
just
got me
checking
into
off the
lore.
list, man.
Yeah. Um, uh, I read the books. I love the books. I want
What's your
like I
favorite
read all
book?
of the books. Glasslands. Next to Glasslands, it's probably
Okay.
First Strike. Nah, probably not First Strike. Probably First Contact. Just our
First
Contact Harbor.
Strike. First Strike was one of the books that filled me with the most awe because
Yeah,
I think it had come out before the second game, but it was after the first, and so we still
yeah.
didn't have any sort of idea of where the series was going to go. There's just a lot to
Yeah.
take from that book.
The fact that they wrote 3 books for the Halo for the first Halo game.
Yeah.
Before the second game even came out.
The fact
But yeah,
that the book that covers the Halo game is still, you learned so much from that book despite playing through the game as the main character.
yeah. I
It's
like
a
it. I love it.
it's a great series. That is definitely one of my, if not my favorite lore, definitely my favorite game series of all time. So
Yeah.
I'm assuming you watch and or listen to Eckhart's Ladder.
Uh, I think I listened to Eckhart's Ladder. I'm trying to remember if I did. The problem was once they came out with the Forerunner series, the one that kind of like took all the lore that from the first 3 games and just kind of like, we're gonna invent our own universe that
Yeah.
out of Halo, and I kind of went, no. So the
I
last one I really
actually
read, last one I really read was Glasslands because I really like Glasslands.
No,
But
Eckhart's Ladder is a YouTube channel. They cover like Halo,
yeah,
Star
oh yeah,
Wars, Star Trek.
yes, I've listened to Eckhart's Ladder before.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
many times.
Um, that actually that the what is that called? The Forerunner trilogy. That's actually my favorite trilogy of all the books. I just love the story of it.
I enjoy the crazy out of like 1960s style like attempt at this background. Like it feels
Hmm.
like a Heinlein book, where it's like, let's, the writer did a lot of drugs. Let's go with this, they're on LSD this entire time. We're going to go for some trippy stuff. It felt very like Dune, in terms of this like mythic kind of level, whereas the departure was a little off to me compared
I
to
see.
the grounded real like Halo books, which is why I
They
think it's just
really doubled down on the primordial angle. What is your
yeah.
opinion on the whole idea of humans having been this like massive spacefaring race and then being reset to what is now known as the beginning of humanity?
It's an old trope. I don't mind it.
Yeah.
I think it's more interesting that Guilty Spark used to be the
Human.
used to be a human.
Yeah.
It's weird for him to, because like in the games he's very much like aloof to humanity. But I think that's the thing about Guilty Spark that is the cool part until he becomes evil. Until he was always evil all the time.
Yeah. Then
Always
till he
didn't
showed
realize
you
it.
how evil.
Yeah. Is that like when he first meets you, it's not like in the games when he first meets Master Chief, he's just kind of like, hey, we got to do stuff, like nothing, like it's almost as if he was expecting it, so it kind of
Yeah.
works.
You're the
It works
reclaimer.
that, like,
You're meant to be there.
yeah, that you show up and that Master Chief shows up with these humans, and even like people like Johnson, he's like, I know who you are, like I was you like a million years ago,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Like, I get you. on a deep level. And
Yeah.
we're like, what do you mean? Until we read the
Yeah.
books.
Yeah.
So going back to the pen and paper RPGs, interesting question in chat, but I would be interested in hearing the answer to this. What do you think that Star Citizen should eventually have its own pen and paper? Do you think it deserves
Yes.
that? Yeah.
Yes, 100%. There's too much. Like they would have to partner with a company that really understands how Star Citizen works.
Mhm.
And the hardest thing that any tabletop RPG struggles with when it comes to sci-fi is space combat. There's never I've never seen a good space combat style. So they'd have to sit down and actually work that out. But Star Citizen already has so many different aspects of a tabletop RPG in it. Different weapons, different armor loadouts, different it's even built on the back of choice being what matters, and different factions. All you really need to do is slot a mechanics system for pen and paper into the world. They already kind of did something like that. They made a board game version of it for the economy. So it would just require some, like I said, mechanical crafting to slot into the universe, and then you've got, you already have all of this deep lore and background information. I think people would play it too, because the Star Citizen community is usually older, and so the older community, people who are older, tend to play tabletop RPGs more because they played it when they're younger, sort of thing. Mm-hmm. So,
do you think the majority of Star Citizen's lore is still? I think a lot of people look at what we see in descriptions and in lore around the game right now and think like, this isn't really that deep. I'm not really getting that much from this. Would you agree in saying that most of the lore isn't even made yet?
I would say that most of the lore is actually made. It's just
not accessible, that easily accessible, or
or it's not in the game. It's not accessible in the game, which is the hard part, is the complicated part. So yeah, it's access. I think the problem with lore is more that if you read the monthly reports, and I know you do, so every so often you'll read the narrative team, and there's a couple of times I've seen the narrative team say, "Hey, we want to do more in the game," and then the developers are like, "We want to too, but we need to get this done and this done and this done and this done and this done before we can slot that in." So, examples are like Xenothreat and the Nine Tails lockdown stuff. And the Mission Givers, these are all your first tastes of the lore of this broader universe. But as I think I've said this before, is that what Star Citizen's a video game. It needs to have its lore in the game. And until that happens, it's not going to be accessible to many people. What I do is essentially just give people a framework to understand what the universe they're playing in. But it's not surprising that so many people say Star Citizen lore bad, because it's just not accessible. People just don't know about it because they play it in game. Because no one's going to want to go to a YouTube channel to have them explain why quantum travel works. They just want to quantum travel.
You want to see why it works. Experience it and learn in game. So you have an interesting theory I have seen, I believe, on your stream, maybe? And I think you have an explanation that ties into lore based on it, but where do you think the next system is going to be after Nyx? So right now we're in Stanton. It's the first system. The next is Pyro, being a heavily pirate-controlled system. And then Nyx, obviously, is the third system, which we know is also being worked on. But where do you think we're going to go after that?
So there's two...
I'm actually going to go ahead and pull up the Arc star map so that people can kind of see what we're talking about here. Go ahead.
So once you pull up the star map, you'll notice that Stanton has a couple different jump points. One's to Terra. We're not going to get Terra this early. Terra is too difficult to build at this time. They might, but it would be like tackling Terra would take maybe a year or two, just because of how complicated and how deep it is. It's literally, I would say it's one of the two main hubs. Like Sol and Terra will be the two main hubs for gameplay to do anything and everything, but also very early starter kind of locations. Stanton being kind of like medium place, a place where if you're starting out, you might start in Terra, you might jump to Stanton first to kind of do some more stuff, but it's a little bit more lawless, a little bit more on the frontier, but still much more, developed than everywhere else. So I don't think Terra is going to be the case. I think that's a later time.
Okay.
Magnus, which is also connected to Stanton, might be one. It's a lot more lawless than Stanton, but not as lawless as Nyx or Pyro. It's still in the UEE's control. It's the headquarters of Drake Interplanetary, so it should be cool to see.
It's also the main system in my org's lore.
Yeah,
that's where we're based.
Nice. Yeah, my character in game is going to be from Magnus because I like it. It's cool. It's Space Detroit.
Cool system. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's right next to Space Caribbean too, Ellis.
Yeah. It's right next to Ellis too. So, so I think that's a good contender. But I have a crazy theory, which I think is a solid theory, but we'll see. Okay. There is one system that connects both Pyro and Nyx, which is small, so it wouldn't be that too complicated to do. It covers a wide variety of content. Like there's a lot of stuff in there that we don't see anywhere else. So it would allow them to build new assets that would be reused for multiple other places. And because it's small, it won't take as long. It's only 2 planets. And it already has 2 jump points to both Nyx and to Pyro. So it's already like fills out that kind of area a little bit better. And there are multiple concept art pieces of it. Multiple concept art pieces, which is rare. There's very few systems that have tons and tons of concept art. Most will have one, if that. And it's usually just some planet. This system has 3 different concept arts for its landing zone and a concept art for its the actual system. This
right.
Is Castra.
Yeah, because there are 2 landing zones there, right?
Nope, Castra has 1.
No.
Yeah, it's Sherman.
It's so just Castra, Sherman. Okay.
Yeah, Castra has, I think, a gas giant. If I remember correctly, I might be wrong on that one. And it has a planet, and that planet is called Cascom. It is a former military base that was on the border of. It's a former Periline system, really. So it was a military base there, and it has a jump point to Nyx and has a jump point to Pyro. And because it's a former military base, it has that former military aesthetic, like kind of bunkers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so it's different from everything else we've seen, but it's slowly growing, and it's this beautiful vista because it's built on top of a mountain. It's like built into a mountain. So you fly into this area, you land in there in these big, beautiful vistas, and they have like a concept art of both at night and during the day. So I think that's a solid, easy win for them because it already has 2 jump points. It's two planets, and it's a new landing zone, which would be totally different from anything we've seen before. And it's more of the UEE, but on the frontier. So it's less of a, go downtown and buy yourself whatever you want from one of the 17 different big box stores. It's like, we got 3 stores. One's a gas station convenience center. Good luck. So it'll be perfect for those people who want to play on the frontier and the edge of space, but don't want to be attacked by pirates every 5 minutes. So
sure. Yeah. So do you think, and with that being an old military base, is there still UEE presence in there in this system, like a heavy UEE presence?
Not a heavy, but there's a light UEE presence because it's still on the border of the Xi'an. It also allows them to start opening up other places like to the Xi'an systems pretty quickly.
Yeah.
I think there's also like a jump point from there to a Vanduul system. It's like 1 jump point away from a Vanduul system. So there's like a lot of options there for them to go to if they want to. So, and it's like I said, easy win. And on the roadmap, there are two things that they're working on for an unknown system. And at first I thought those were 2 planets because they did in each individual planet was listed on the roadmap. So for a Prior Striker. So I said, okay, what has 2 planets that's near the Stanton system. Castra is the only one. So that's why I was like, that's it. But then I looked at the actual description, and one's like, planetary tech, and the other one's like system tech. And I was like, oh. Like one's like planetary,
wiped that one out,
and the other one. So it kind of wiped that rule out. So I'm like, it might be Magnus still, but I still think Castra would be a good choice just because of how much of it's like a swish. It's just super easy to just like knock it out. Like it's just a nice little putt into the hole.
I would be interested in either of those systems, to be honest. Do you think at that point they'll still be adding systems based on the needs that they have? For instance, Pyro being a system they need to add in order to understand how Lawless will work, and Stanton being the system that it was being so complex. Do you think they'll still be adding systems at that point that are specifically because of some sort of gameplay linked need?
Yeah, I think so. I think they'll. Honestly, I think you have the 5 systems, which we used to call the line of 5 back in the day. I don't think it's really a line anymore, but the 5 systems that I think would be perfect for a beta is for going into a beta release would be Castra, Nyx, Pyro, Stanton, and Magnus, because they kind of cover the gambit of the kind of gameplay. You have Stanton.
What does Castra cover?
Castra covers the border frontier world that's not lawless, but is not secure. So it covers its military establishments. So you get that military kind of aesthetic in terms of the buildings, but you also get a little bit more military presence because it is still a border world. So you have a little bit more of patrols and stuff like that. You also have, it's a border world. It's a border system. So you get lots of like Xi'an trade, which will come through that region because it's, on the routes from Xi'an Xi'an to Terra and Stanton. So it's like one of those checkpoints.
It definitely sounds like a great system. It sounds like a mix between Stanton and Nyx, kind of.
Yeah. And it versus like Magnus, which is like a decrepit old system. It's falling down. It's just building itself back up, but it's a lot more lawless than something like Castra, but not as lawless as like Nyx or Pyro, but it's still part of the UEE. So you've got this like the underbelly of the UEE, you've got the corporate center of the UEE, and you've got a military base. And then you've got the we just want to be left alone lawless, and we want to kill everyone lawless, which is a good kind of mix for gameplay in those regions.
Healthy mix.
Things. Yeah.
It'll be very interesting to keep a keen eye on how much they allow the lore surrounding these systems, the way that they work. Like you're saying, sort of almost the theme of each system and how they use that to cater the gameplay. And much like they're doing with the planetary tech, sort of mix pieces of different systems together, taking that lawlessness of Pyro, but mixing it with maybe the more strong entrepreneurial spirit of Magnus, because it's growing up, combining those into a different system somewhere, and allowing us some unique gameplay on that. One of the things that really worries me is that we'll have all this great wrapping, this great game. Even the gameplay is there, the graphics are there, everything is there, but then all of the things we're doing don't really tie into each other through the lore, through explanations. And they do talk about this a lot. But that's I think one of the more important things to me when I think of the dream of what Star Citizen is. That sort of interconnectivity seems like it's really high up there.
Oh yeah. I mean, I did a video on this where I think reputation is the glue that binds that together. With reputation is going to be the thing that allows for players to interact and mess with the universe and create a universe that's different from what we see. And that first step was reputation. Then we got Xenothreat, and I think the next big step is Ninetales. And while I don't think it involves reputation, they even said they said it's crime stat right now for when it's going to come out. I think eventually the Ninetales lockdown stuff will be tied to reputation, where you don't even get an invite from either Crusader security or from the Ninetales unless you have a good reputation with them. So,
how long do you think it'll take until we're getting these sort of dynamic events in the game and they're not even getting announced beforehand?
A year.
You think next year?
I think next year. This time next year, they'll just start dropping them in. I mean, they'll still announce it because it's CIG, but they won't tell you necessarily. Like, they can't shut up about what they like to do. So they'll tell everybody. but I don't think they'll like by this time next year. They'll probably have 3 or 4 different events that they can run at various times. So they'll have like Ninetales Lockdown will show up, but it'll show up like every other weekend or every once a month, and then every other weekend has a different event that's going on, so that it keeps things fluid and interesting. So
Yeah. I don't know about you, but I'm really excited about the one-shot events that occur and then don't keep looping over, that give you that sense of being in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing. Those are really exciting to me.
The world events.
Yeah.
Or like not really world events, more like this big story event. I love those. Like the Xenothreat should have been a story event, but we'll see. I feel like they're going to do that. I think that was the initial plan for Xenothreat, but then tech limitations stopped them from being able to do it. So
I want some hard decisions. I want to see like the UEE blockade a planet, and you have to decide if you're going to go against them and help the planet, or if you're just going to be, the uptight UEE lackey. I want to see some cool long-term one-shot events like that. They're very, very cool idea. And I know I saw it on the progress tracker, so that's really good to see.
Yeah, I agree. I think anything that makes players make a hard decision that is morally gray, that is not instant yes or no, like, oh yes, of course I'm going to help them out, or no, I hate this person, whatever. I think that's an interesting decision to make. And I think reputation is the key for that one, because like in the future, I'm a smuggler is my profession in game. So the people I work with in Stanton are the Ninetales, because they're the ones who give the jobs out, because the people they're allied with are the smuggling syndicate. So when it comes to things like the Ninetales Lockdown in the future, I have to sit here and go, oh man, what do I do? I don't want to be illegal, but I don't want to run illegal because I want to run gray, but I don't want to make these guys angry at me because they give me money. So I got to make that decision.
There's an interesting point that I think a lot of people are going to start making as these events become more popular, is that there are going to be events that maybe wouldn't be the best for a particular person to take part in, right? Like you are allied with Ninetales, but not necessarily in the sense that you want to ruin a space station. You're just trying to smuggle stuff. So in order to keep that alliance without obviously doing something that you don't want to do that'll get you into more trouble with locals, you maybe opt out of that. Obviously right now that's not super realistic since we don't get to do this stuff much, but that's another really important point when it comes to these events in the future. Not everybody's going to get to do every one. And I've never been in an MMO, so I don't know how these situations are generally handled. But that's something that does, again, make me excited about Star Citizen. It adds to the uniqueness of your story.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the way that Star Citizen's handling it with MMO versus other MMOs is it's different. It's not, it's there's a lot of it that's similar, but there's a lot of it that is just straight up different because of things like lack of factions, of hard factions. You're not like stuck into a faction, and I don't know. There's just a lot of varying factors with Star Citizen that feels more like an old MMO, like an Ultima Online or Star Wars Galaxies, than it does feel like a modern MMO. Which is why I think a lot of people are like, well, this doesn't feel like an MMO. It's like, because it's not WoW. it's a different type of thing. So
see, I can't, like I said, first MMO, I can't really picture what that means. Is there a very obvious sign or something that shows that?
So here's a good example of something that I want to see in Star Citizen. I think will happen. I stopped playing WoW for a long time, and then I decided to pop in. I had no idea what was going on in the universe. I just popped back in for, after stop playing for a month. And when I popped back in, there's these giant floating ziggurats over every major city. And if you walked into the major cities, there were level like 90 mobs just killing everybody. And I'm sitting there going, I have no idea what I'm going to do. I'm level 25. And I'm seeing these like level 90 players just like running past me into these mobs to go fight. And I was like, this feels like an event. This feels like there's an invasion going on. And I feel powerless because I don't have that, that power level yet. And I wasn't level 90, but whatever. It's a high level. And so those events in WoW are usually telegraphed ahead of time. They usually do a big like cinematic overview, and it's like you have to be with both this faction or this faction. You can't be with you have to be with Horde or the Alliance, or you can be with both. But then they do everything they can to keep the factions in place. Whereas with Star Citizen, they don't care. They'll destroy the UEE if they want to, just because it's good for a story. So there's it's a different type of environment because the players can impact everything. It's not just a pre-planned event, and they also can just take their universe and say the sandbox is too bland. Let's just throw it up into the air and see what happens. And that's much more like old school Star Wars Galaxy style versus modern kind of more of a sandbox rather than a theme park. So
when you talk about that, I get super excited. But I want them to prove that. I have never been one to subscribe to the theory. But going by what you're saying, I would love to see a catastrophic event lead to the destruction of Port Olisar. Because not just because that would be cool to see, but it would prove to me that CIG is willing to turn the game on its head to make for a good story, like you're saying. That is so refreshing. That is refreshing on the same level that it's refreshing how much time they're spending on all the small details and taking their time.
Yeah. And I would say that the thing about that is, and I'll just real quick, is that that's what the lore is pointing towards. Like, there is no good guy in Star Citizen. The UEE is framed as the good guy, but they're not good. They're just the necessary evil in many cases. And so if the Port Olisar was destroyed, it would feel like a natural event that happens in this universe where invasions are happening at random times by galactic interplanetary species that is just mowing everything down, or everyone you talk to, anyone you talk to could be politically motivated or financially motivated to screw you over the instant they want to. That's the universe they're building. So the destruction of Port Olisar, in my mind, is more like, that could happen just because it's the lore.
Yeah, normal thing.
Yeah. Not a super normal thing, but it's still
not like every day.
Yeah. We destroy stations every day, but,
Another space station fell out of the sky. Too bad. No, it obviously can't be like craziness happening all the time, but I'm happy to hear that as somebody who pays a lot of attention to this stuff, you do see that happening, because that's nobody wants to play. Like, if we wanted to play in a boring world, we'd just keep doing what we're doing in real life. Like, we want to play something with that kind of exciting unpredictableness. And with all these games that are starting to get dynamic events that go and these live events that go for everybody, Star Citizen is the perfect place for something like that. More so than another game where you're playing the same thing but outside of your ships, being able to be inside somebody else's ship and experience that stuff together. Like you were saying, you jumped into that server and there were level 90 people running past you, and I'm sitting here thinking, what if you jumped into a system and there were people with Idris and Polaris and javelins flying past you towards this massive battle? That's exactly what I signed up for.
Yeah, I am waiting for the time when CIG decides that the event is a Vanduul invasion of a border system, and players get to go help, because that madness, that pandemonium, that utter chaos is what I think most people are looking for.
It would be crazy.
Fly into a system and just see nothing but capital ships duking it out and fighters flying all the way around. That's the dream, but we'll see if they can get that done.
That is the dream. That is it. Do you think we could see the Vanduul in Star Citizen before Squadron 42?
Yes.
Really?
I think so. Yeah. I don't think it'll be massive. I think it'll be small, because even though the Vanduul are the big bads of Squadron 42, I don't think they're the big bads. If you know what I mean? I think they're the main antagonists, more as a force of nature rather than a character. So
they're the kind of poster that the game sends you after.
Yeah, they're the I'm trying to think of a good example of this. They are more like the elites in Halo 1 than the elites in Halo 2. If that makes sense. Or the brutes in Halo 3. They're more like the brutes in Halo 3. They're the enemy, but they're not targets. They're just there to be used. You know, they're not targets. They're not the prophets. Who's the main?
The obvious question, yeah. Who do you think?
I'm not going to tell you because I know who the answer is.
From the script or
from audio leaks? Because I was there's a long story about that, but essentially I spoiled all of Squadron 42 for myself by accident. So I know who the main antagonist is and what the twist is of Squadron 42 and all those sorts of things. So I know who it is. It's not who you think, but I will say that they're not alien. That's all I'm going to say.
Well, that's a big giveaway.
There's a lot of humans in the Star Citizen universe, so I can't,
True.
Yeah.
But knowing that they're human is a big give. I'm over here thinking, maybe the Kurthak. That would be interesting, but I know that's kind of a long shot.
The Kurthak is something that the lore team is keeping in their back pocket. That's something they're going to pull out at some point. I don't know when.
Be a nice wild card.
Yeah. So.
Well, I would be interested to see the I did not think that they would bring the Vanduul to Squadron 42 first, to Star Citizen first, but I guess that would be a really good surprise. Like that would be a great headline for an event, like you were saying.
Yeah. It really depends, because I also think that the Vanduul are a threat in many ways, and their biggest threat that could be in game is like large scale invasions.
Right.
So a large scale invasions requires like background server tech to work, multiple capital ships that begin game. So I would almost bet that we would get a Vanduul invasion of some system the time period between beta, when they reach beta for Squadron 42, and launch. That kind of thing.
Do you think they'll just wait for Operation Pitchfork then?
Possibly. Or no, not Star Citizen beta, but Squadron 42 beta.
I
think what they'll do is they'll throw them into the game for us to test as antagonists, to test their AI behavior before Star Citizen comes out, before Squadron comes out, so that way they can go, oh shoot, this whole thing right here is wrong. They're not supposed to be doing that. Let's fix this. Also because they have the assets, and they're kids at heart when it comes to things like this. They're just like, let's throw big stuff at them. Why? Because we want to.
Explosions, bright things, particles. Yes, they are just as nerdy as we are. Mm-hmm. So one last question here I want before we wrap it up. What is something that you admire from another fiction that you would like to see in some way in Star Citizen, whether that be a method by which they tell the lore, or diving deeper into the far history of the lore, or just something that you're really interested in learning more about in Star Citizen that you haven't really seen focused on?
It's kind of two questions. I would say that there are other lore groups that do this better. The other kind of like properties. I think the gold standard, other than Mass Effect, which I think does really well, is probably the 40K universe. Not because the 40K universe is good lore; it's all over the place. I hear
a lot about it.
Like, yeah, a lot of people love it. A lot of people hate it. There's a lot of interest. The thing about the 40K lore that I think makes it unique and similar to something like BattleTech is it's been around for 40 years. So they've been writing books for 40 years. And because they've been writing books for 40 years, there's a lot of information. You can know anything you want about the universe from the perspective of the common soldier on the battlefield, to alien creatures that have lived for millions, if not billions of years, to a cop on the street, like a investigator trying to investigate a crime. They have all sorts of these different types and different, they've explored it all, and they haven't even explored out every little aspect of the universe yet. And I think that's the thing that I'd like to see more in Star Citizen. Less of the big bad space adventurer and more of the Joe who is the insurance adjuster.
Right, the common person's perspective.
Yeah, the what I'd like to know more about, and I think the community would also like to know about what makes Stanton, or what makes Lorville different from ArcCorp. Not just in terms of its aesthetics, but the people who live there. Do they have a different accent? Do they have there? Yeah. And the one thing I don't like about Star Citizen right now is that everyone is from North England. I don't know why the entire universe almost 900 years into the future, almost 1,000 years into the future, everyone has English accents for some reason.
There's so little diversity in the people in the game. Yeah. It's weird. It is really weird. But that is a super good point you made. We don't really, and what reminds me most of this are the audio posts you could find in Halo ODST that followed the robot, the superintendent, and the girl who's just another girl in New Mombasa. And that was such a great little insight into the normal everyday life of somebody there. We need that because we don't even know, like, we're citizens, we have spaceships, but most of the people don't even have spaceships. And we don't know what it's like to not have a spaceship in Star Citizen. Yeah.
What is it like to be born and raised on Lorville? And interesting stories would be, what is it like to be born and raised on Lorville and then be catapulted into this grand adventure across the stars? Like, I've never seen anything but Lorville. Yeah. I've had to put a bag on my face every time I leave my room. What is it like to step out into like Microtech? Where like Lorville it never got below freezing, and now in Microtech you're freezing to death.
Or what is everybody's view of each other? We don't even know what people on Microtech think of people in Lorville. Do they think that they're trash? Do the people on Lorville think people in Orison are like hoity-toity? Like that kind of stuff is very. You don't think about it until you realize it's not there, and then you're like, well, what do people think?
Yeah, we need culture. We need individual cultures and unique aspects for each of the places that they go to, because both story-wise and realistically, that's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting, and it would have made sense. The people who live in Lorville, even if it's been around for only 100 years, would have a very different outlook in life compared to the people who live in Terra or people who live in Magnus. So
it's kind of something that I get every once in a while with Star Wars that I do wish we would get more of. That's another thing that I wish I could see more of is that in Star Wars. When things like when you see generally the Jedi that they're following get into some situation off in some random quarter where nobody's ever seen the Jedi, or like what they touch on in The Mandalorian, how he, in this world where we think of the Force as being everywhere all the time and lightsabers are normal and wars are a big thing, and you get these people who's the main star in this huge adventure, and he sees the Force and he's like, what the heck is that? You get this idea that not everything that happens is actually being transmitted to everybody, and you definitely don't get that in Star Citizen. That's a good one, though.
I think that's the big one. And I think the easiest way of doing that, other than culture, is wild lines for NPCs. Have NPCs walking around talking to each other in the landing zones. That adds, make it feel like a universe, that I'm in a place rather than just in a video game loading zone.
Just please don't make it be triggered every time I walk past the person. I am traumatized from BioWare games with all this immersion and information, but it gets thrown at me every time I walk past that same garbage can. But all right, Paul, this has been a fantastic talk. Thank you so much for stopping in here today. You did owe me after yesterday's show. If you haven't seen that, Paul runs the Captain's Table, and actually a lot of lore stuff as well over on YouTube, but the Captain's Table specifically, yesterday I was on, and we had a great discussion about what's going on with 314 and even further on to 315 and 316. If you want to check that discussion out, that is available on your YouTube channel, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah, it's also available on any podcast app. So, because as of this release, as of today, when this is out where everyone's watching it, it should be out on Spotify, and it should be out later during the week for pretty much any other location as well.
So if that's right. You're doing You're doing Anchor as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you using Anchor as well? Yeah.
I
it's
just switched
super
over
helpful.
to it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's super nice.
Yeah. The
So,
service I was using before was charging like $30 a month, and then they were telling
mhm.
me you can only use this much amount of time, which was essentially four 40-minute episodes per month. So it was like
Yeah.
if I wanted to do one extra episode or something extra longer, it was more on top of the $30. And I was like,
Yeah.
why would I?
Nope.
Why would
Yeah.
no? Yeah. So yeah, you could find all of his lore stuff as well, and additional information on Star Citizen that he goes over on the YouTube channel. I believe it's the Astro Pub, correct?
Yep. YouTube.com/AstroPub.
Gotta find those people and take their name away so you could just be Astro Pub.
Yes, and we need to find a posse, get a posse together, and or hire an investigator and figure out who Space Tomato is everywhere on all the other platforms and just take it from them.
There's got to be a service for this at this point, right? You hire somebody to track all these people down. Because man, it's just, I mean, it's like this now. Imagine in 10 years. I don't know. Maybe these services won't be around in 10 years. But anyways, that was week 9, episode 9 of the Launch Sequence podcast. Another great episode. Again, thank you to Paul. Thank you to everybody who is watching live, everybody who's watching on YouTube, or everybody who is listening on one of the many services that we publish to. Remember to leave a review, leave a rating possibly. Let us know what you liked and didn't like of the episode, how we can improve. And I will see you again next week.
Goodbye.